You're listening to the Loving Your Own Soul podcast, and I'm your host, Britt. Guided by my own intuition, my intention is to deliver genuine conversations centered around health and wellness, spirituality, self-expression, and culture. In this space, I will provide you with real-life stories, theories, and inspiring perspectives to help you uncover and tap into your own true potential. I'm so grateful you've chosen to tune in with me on this mindful exploration to living a more fluid life through a deeper connection to the soul. Now let's dive into today's journey. Today on the podcast, we have such a delight of a human, Meredith Rawlings, and this girl is truly such a ray of sunshine and just has such beautiful energy. I know that all of you are going to vibe just with this conversation, and Meredith in general. We cover so many topics, including the quantum, time, energy, freedom, abundance, manifestation, you name it. It's such a good conversation. I'm really excited for this. And if any of you are new to Meredith and her journey, Meredith's main purpose here is really to help mission-driven CEOs deactivate conditioning to collapse time, make more money, and fall back in love with your business. And as we talk about in the show, Meredith has a new group coaching offering called the Quantum Alignment Certification, QAC, which is really designed to help you become more of your authentic self. And this group coaching container is truly just so unique and so powerful. We chat about it, so definitely listen through it to the end, but I highly recommend learning more by following the link in the show notes. And synchronistically enough, if you are listening in real time here today, Tuesday, August 10th, today is actually the last day to enroll. So listen to this episode, fall in love with Meredith, go check out QAC, and definitely hit her up for a discovery call. I can guarantee you will not regret it. This girl is such a light, and she is truly just so in her power and just doing such unique work. Yeah, that's all I'll say. You guys can listen to us in this conversation, and I will let her speak for herself. But before we jump in, I did want to remind all of you about an exciting new opportunity that I have coming up in December, as I will be hosting a 3-day spiritual wellness experience in Rincon, Puerto Rico. This will take place the beginning of December, Friday, December 3rd through Monday, December 6th. And this experience will include accommodations at one of Rincon's top oceanfront villas. It is truly the most gorgeous villa, full transportation throughout the weekend. And yes, that includes to and from the airport. All you have to do is book a flight and get yourself there. The rest is taken care of. And the whole weekend will be centered around the new moon in Sagittarius that Saturday, as we really release and reconnect from the past year while looking ahead to what we are cultivating and just calling in for ourselves. So when you think about this magical experience, you can think about soul sisterly connections, daily yoga, cacao ceremonies, meditation and healing circles, live music, dance parties, bonfires, coconuts, healthy foods, time to relax, connect with yourself, connect with Mother Nature, and so much more. I truly am so excited about this. This has completely downloaded in from my heart. It blends all of my passions together, and yeah, I'm just so excited. So if you are interested in this experience, I have not officially launched this yet. So if you would like a special discount code, do shoot me a message over at the Britt Olson on Instagram, as space for this experience will be opening up next week. So if you are listening in real time, it will open up the week of August 16th. And I can guarantee you, I've already received so many messages and interest in this experience. It will be very intimate and personal. So If you want to join us, shoot me a message. It will fill up. That is not a marketing tactic. I do not believe in using those language. That is a true statement. So stay tuned for more information, and let's definitely connect live together in person this December down in the Caribbean. I mean, what could be better than that? But in the meantime, and without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's episode with Meredith Rawlings. Enjoy, and I will see you on the other side. Well, Meredith, welcome. So fun connecting with you. It's so funny. I feel like just like in this time and age and like space that we live in, the amount of just like real connections that are coming from all different angles are just so true and just like so abundant right now. So I'm excited to kind of connect with you and just dive in a little bit deeper to you and your journey and everything you've got going on.
I'm really excited. I just love the whole conversation we've already had pre-recording, and I'm really excited to just see where this takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually funny. We were just talking. You are living in the place where I grew up, Wilmington, kind of the southeastern tip of North Carolina over on the East Coast. And I know you love the sun, the ocean, just kind of all the elements of the earth and everything. And I would love to know kind of just what that like connection to nature and the elements really brings to you in your life.
That's such a good question. No one's ever asked me that before, but it is something that's always been really important to me. You know, I grew up in Kentucky, so I obviously did not grow up near the water at all, but everywhere I've lived there's always been some element where I have to be near nature, or else I just feel almost adrift. Like I just can't, it's almost like I can't get my bearings. And I noticed that even when I was really little. We took a trip to New York City when I was like 10 with my family. And I remember it was kind of the first time I noticed feeling anxious. And I couldn't put words to it then, but I remember when we were flying back into Lexington and I saw the green everywhere because the airport in Lexington is out in the middle of all the horse farms. It's right across from the racetracks. Like you have all the horses. It's so pretty. So we were flying back in and I saw all the green and I was just like, oh, thank God. And so now living by the ocean, it just kind of takes it to another level. It's when I have moments where I feel lost or I feel my ego is coming into play a lot and I can't really get it under control. If I just go either sit by the water or float in the ocean, like everything just kind of settles. It's just something that's invaluable to me. And every time I think about leaving or moving somewhere else, that kind of keeps me from going too far down that road, I guess. Like I just can't imagine it now. And I've only lived near the water for 4 years, but it feels like I've always been this way, I guess.
I love that. Such a deep connection. It's funny you mentioned that with New York City, because I spent a few years there in my kind of early to mid 20s, was very like laser focused, corporate driven, fully into the hustle, was becoming I love the city. It taught me so much about myself. I think it's, just something we have to all experience in some shape or form. Mm-hmm. But I had actually taken a surf trip with one of my good friends at the time down to Rincon, Puerto Rico. And it was my first, I was traveling a ton for work, but wasn't like that connected back to my roots of the ocean. And being at that trip, like just completely opened me back to my true nature. And even when we were leaving, I was like bawling at the airport. And I always get this like twinge with traveling of like, oh, I don't want to go back home kind of thing. I'm a Sagittarius moon as well, and just love all things travel and adventure. But it was just so interesting. So I totally relate to that story of you coming home to Kentucky, because it's like that, those innate connections, they're a part of us, like whether you're aware of them or not. And they're just so true and such soulful parts of our being.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm actually curious about this with you. How did you end up getting out of that like corporate hustle New York mindset? Because that's something that I work through a lot with my clients too. I'm always curious to hear how people
Yeah.
extricate themselves.
Yeah. So it has taken me, honestly, a few years to like fully decompress, recalibrate myself. Obviously, I grew up in a smaller town and everything like that. So for me, it was really, well, number one, it was I didn't have the awareness of it. I had actually had a communication with a medium right before I decided to leave New York. And we were talking just a lot about like, what the city was doing to me, and that kind of, I got what I needed from it. And it was now time for me to move on. At the same time, I had friends and family, mostly family members, who are like, you've kind of lost your sweetness. Like you feel like you're not, the same. And I was noticing about myself just in interactions with people, and I wasn't feeling completely me. But a lot of it was honestly just tuning back into the tools that so many of us have in our toolbox, like meditation and breath work and learning to take breaks, also not taking breaks and like completely still running myself in overdrive, to then unfortunately having to hit burnout and having to then pick myself back up and figure out how to walk again, really tuning into that feminine nature and just really really paying attention and having a lot of awareness to what is not working. And just, even like, I'm huge with trying things differently, like just do something differently than how you're doing it and see what happens. Worst case, go back to doing things the way that you were doing them.
Yeah, I love that. And that's something that I tell my people a lot is, let's just act like we're scientists and we're conducting an experiment. You don't need to be attached to your hypothesis. Let's just see what happens and just get curious about it and stop attaching meaning. So like if I stop hustling, if I stop working so hard, then I'm not going to make any money, right? Like that's the big fear. And like, what if it doesn't mean that? Like, what if that's not what it is at all? What if it's the opposite? Like, let's just see, just try it, because what you're doing is not feeling good. So you might as well try something different while you still have the energy to try something different.
Totally. Yes, 100%. And I think too, following those little inklings of that, like something more. And when you have that little thought in your head or that feeling in the pit of your stomach that just won't leave you, or even if it's, through podcasts, like we're sitting here recording and stuff, when you keep hearing a similar message or getting this similar pull, like do yourself a favor and at least follow it and just see what's out there, because typically it's not just a coincidence that you keep getting these little feelings inside of you.
Yeah, and it's not a coincidence that the same things come up over and over. Every time I've had some big shift in my life, there's always been like at least 3 instances in a week or so where the same thing will come up. And it happened when I hired my first business coach. I saw his like Facebook ad. And then I think someone else mentioned him on a podcast, like Amanda Bucci's podcast or something. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I ended up hiring him. And that's how I was able to quit my job 3 years ago. And same thing with human design. Like it just kept coming up. And I was like, what is this? Over and over and over in 1 week. All of a sudden, I'd never heard of it. And all of a sudden it was everywhere. I was like, okay, well, I guess you can take my money too, and I'll just see what this is about, So it's just all that stuff is just so interesting how it's almost like God is smacking you over the head. Like, just listen, just like, how many times do I tell you, just listen, do what I told you,
100%. And, I've had then people have to scream at me as well, like God or source, the universe or whoever, literally like stop me in my tracks. And that's always not super comfortable too. So kind of honoring those signs now and knowing, okay, I don't want to have like, let me try to lean into the whisper instead of making you scream at me and literally like push me into the direction that is most suitable for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you have specific ways that God screams at you, but mine was, and one of my clients is an astrology expert. So she did a reading for me and she said it has something to do with something in my astrology. I don't remember. But I get sick when I'm out of alignment. And my whole life has been like that. Every time I'm way too stressed or I'm doing way too much, I get sick. and it's almost like God ramped up the illnesses that I was getting because I stopped listening. Like I got strep so many times I didn't even care that I had strep anymore. And then it was like, okay, well, let's give you a rash because you're going to pay attention to that, rash on your face and your neck. So it was like that. So did you have something specific that was like always the same thing?
So mine is usually kind of those like crash and burn where something will literally, and it's funny you mentioned that because it has something to do with my astrological chart too. It's something where my Pluto is that I'm very death and rebirth and transformation is just kind of a piece, but it's very like crash and burn for me. But my husband, though, it's interesting. He is very physical, like you, whether it is a sickness, really not listening, like an autoimmune flare up, or even just the last few months, he has been kind of getting back in some similar cycles and things like that, was out mountain biking, finished his ride. And suddenly, next thing he knows, he's like almost to the car, just goes right over the handlebars, shatters his collarbone. And he was like, I literally feel like someone just threw a stick in my tire. Like, I have no clue what happened.
Oh man.
And I was like, someone probably did throw a stick in your tire. He's like, I know.
Yeah.
But it's so true though. Like what is meant for us and what is best for us is just like a reach away. It's just really finding the courage to go after it. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned that because we ask for certain things. We say, okay, well, this year I want to have XYZ, or I'm trying to manifest this and this or whatever. And when it doesn't look the way we think it should look, we tend to freak out. And so getting sick or having some kind of injury, like there could be so many reasons why that needed to happen. And we get so upset if it doesn't look the way we think it should. And I was telling you before, I just moved in with my boyfriend and I like freaked out when he asked me to move in. We've known each other for 4 years. It's not like this was some crazy spontaneous thing, but I was like, oh my God, this is insane. Like and I just spiraled. And then I went back and looked at my journal and I had set an intention that my relationship get more connected and deeper and just, more intimate and all those things. And I was like, well, I asked for this. I just didn't think that it would mean moving in. It's just looking different than what I was thinking. So who am I to say that this isn't the plan? This isn't a good idea. And the more I sat in it, I was like, oh man, that actually sounds super fun. Why wouldn't I do that? It sounds like it's going to make my life better. So why not? So it's just one of those things. And I'm also an emotional authority in human design. And so I'm actually designed to take a while to make decisions. So that was also kind of, my first reaction was like, oh my gosh, no. And then after a week or so, I was like, oh man, no, this is a great idea. So it's just funny how we decide how we think it's going to look. And that ends up tripping us up so much.
So much. It's interesting that you bring this up because one of the things I've been really practicing is releasing the outcome and adding joy and really just surrendering. And like, as much as I think I know what I want, or I think I know what is best for me, or whatever it is, just really trying to put the intention out there and then just drop the outcome away and just really focus on just enjoying the process and having fun because we just get so attached to things. And then when they don't work out, it's like, well, what the heck? Like, what was I even working for? Same with like setting goals, like a certain financial goal, and then you come $5,000 short of that goal or something. It's like, so is everything else, you're just going to throw it all away because you didn't hit the certain number, or is it the experience and what you got out of that whole journey?
Yeah, that's so well said because we do. And I think, and I was talking to one of my clients yesterday. We did a little live stream about goal setting, and so many people responded and said, I have a really hard time setting goals and I have a lot of resistance around setting goals in my business because when I don't meet them or when I don't exceed them, then it feels so defeating and it feels just terrible. And I feel bad about myself and all of that stuff. And I think it's something that happens to a lot of us who come from that. And I think all of us really come from that corporate burnout place the drive and the hustle, and it has to be all about the goals and all about the numbers. And I think we tend to go the opposite direction because we're afraid to go back there. And so we're just like, anything, I'm good. Like if this happens, then that's great. And if not, but something that helped me, because I was definitely in that place, and I still am working through, like, I'm going to set this goal, and whatever happens, it's because it was supposed to happen kind of thing. But what I tell myself is this or better. And that helps me release the attachment to what better means. It doesn't necessarily mean more money. It doesn't necessarily mean, whatever. It can mean, okay, so if I have a goal to get, 10 clients in this program and I get 5, I wasn't ready. And a lot of the time it's because you're not ready. You still need to tweak things, or you think that you're ready to hold space for 10 people and you're not. You need to do 5 and do a really, really, really good job. And then the next time you'll get 20 and it'll be perfect. It's kind of one of those things. And every example I've seen of that in my life, my friends' lives, my clients' lives, is like, you look back and you're like, oh, that would have been a total disaster if I had actually gotten what I think I want. It would have been I would have ended up right back in that burnout space, or I would have, the list goes on. So I think it's all about just this or better, this or better. Like, I'm just letting go of the how, I'm letting go of what it has to look like, all of that stuff, and just letting it play out.
I love that so much. This or better. Such a good mantra. So good. So let's jump in then to you and your line of work. I know you mentioned kind of, a couple minutes ago that you were getting these little inklings of like, you're busy, your first business coach, and then human design. And I know you're a human design reader right now. You're also a life coach, I believe, and then a quantum energy coach. For anyone who is unfamiliar to whether the term quantum energy coaching, do you just want to give a little explanation to what that is, and then maybe kind of what got you to where you are today?
Yeah. So the quantum energy piece of what I do, it's really acknowledging that everything is energy. Everything is frequency. Even the desk that my hands are on, the computer that I can see through, like, all of this is actually mostly energy. And when we tap into that, we're able to kind of wrap our brains a little bit more around how we can manipulate our energy and use energy to help us create our reality. Like, that's kind of the thing, is we're putting ourselves in the driver's seat of our lives instead of thinking, oh, well, I don't have any control, or trying to control through external means, which generally ends up being alcohol or food or love addiction, like whatever it is. And work addiction is a big one. And so the quantum piece is everything is energy. Our emotions are energy. Our thoughts are energy. Everything is energy. And so if we can tap into that, we can basically do whatever we want. And so I use that in conjunction with the life coaching, the mindset coaching that I've been doing for, it's funny. I started working with a quantum coach about 9 months ago, and I was like, wait, I already do this. Like, I am doing what you're doing. I'm just not calling it that. So I kind of use it all together. And then we throw in human design work as well, and kind of just break you open and show you what's possible and put you in the driver's seat. That's ultimately what it is. But I definitely did not start doing any of this. I started doing emotional eating coaching and kind of helping people recover from eating disorders. I guess you could call me a health coach. That's kind of the bracket I would put myself in. But it was always about the mindset. I didn't care if anybody lost weight. I didn't care if they did their workouts even. I just wanted them to see themselves clearly and understand that it's not about what you eat. It's about how you feel about yourself, which is, that's all quantum anyway. I just didn't know it at the time. And so I did that while I was still at my corporate job, and then realized I don't have the capacity to do both well. I was doing both really not great. Quit my job, and then proceeded to burn myself out for the next 6 months. And got really sick, had a really, just got depressed and anxious. And it was really, I ended up having to get medicated because I couldn't pull myself out of it. I was at my wit's end. I didn't know what to do. And I was doing everything. I was doing therapy. I was doing breath work. I was exercising. I was eating right. I was doing everything that you're supposed to do. And finally, my therapist was like, okay, can we please talk about taking some medicine to help you get out of this? And I was like, fine. So for about 6 months, I used that to help me get out, which I think I'm a huge proponent of that. Like if you have done everything and you still don't feel like yourself, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Totally agree.
So yeah, so that was kind of my journey. And right about the time where I was finally allowing myself to, it's one of those things where I was finally letting myself really help myself in a way, because I had so much judgment around, antidepressants. And I just had a lot of judgment from my own family experience and things like that. But right around that time was when I started seeing human design pop up over and over. It was right after I kind of came out of like the lowest, darkest part. That really changed the game, because it was the first time that I allowed myself to see what I perceived in myself to be weaknesses as strengths. I saw ways that I could change the way that I worked and change the way that I spoke, changed the way that I marketed myself, and all of these things to work for my energy and for the way that I'm designed. And same for everybody else. I just saw so many applications, and it was like this huge eye-opening thing. And the coach that I hired did things so differently than anybody else. Like her business is just so different than anything that I had seen before. And so it was also where I started learning about, okay, what's the difference between the masculine energy and the feminine energy? Like you were saying, that was really my first, eye-opening to that as well. And so fast forward another, I guess, year and a half, I had been trying to stop doing the emotional eating coaching for a while. I was certified as a life coach at that point, but I didn't have the confidence to break out of that mold that I had placed myself in. I was really scared to talk about more and talk about all of the things that I had taught myself over the, that year and a half. And I finally found this, I guess, quantum coach, you could call her. She's a lot more than that, but I found her through one of my clients. And she totally blew my mind. The first time I talked to her, I was like, this is so crazy, because this is what I'm already doing. I just didn't know it was this. And this is just totally mind-bending stuff. And I ended up enrolling with her, and she just taught me how to actually do energy clearing and how to activate all these pieces of yourself that you forgot about, and how to connect with your business on, in an energetic kind of quantum level, and like get all these, open up your intuition and just all of these things that I had kind of started to do, but I didn't realize that it was intuition. I thought I was just really smart, like I just didn't, I didn't really get it. So that's really where all of that started. And about 2 months into working with her, I finally had the confidence to start teaching the same stuff to my clients. It's like, okay, I've been doing this for a really long time. Let's get some private clients and see how deep we can go and how much we can get done with this stuff. And let myself do that for about 6 months. And now I'm launching a group program for the first time. So it's just like kind of a cascade where the timeline is just shrinking more and more. Like I'm letting myself do more and more with less time. And yeah, so I'm trying to like fit the last 3 years in like a very short, hopefully, explanation. But yeah, that's kind of how I end up where I am.
No, that's amazing. I know it's always such a loaded question. I was like, tell me how you got to be where you are today. It's like, oh God, do we have 5 hours?
The longer we go on, it's going to be like, okay, what are the cliff notes? I'm going to start having to plan out what I say every time someone asks me that. So we can like, okay, 2 minutes or less. How did you end up here?
For sure. Such a relatable journey though. I mean, there's a couple different things I would love to ask you. Number one, you evolved, like you moved through a lot of different, we can call them titles, we can call them styles of coaching, whatever we want to, but like you said at the baseline, it's really kind of what you've been doing all along.
Yeah.
You just didn't know it, but obviously the ego comes into play, our societal conditioning, again, back to like the corporate of like, you know, you hold one job for the rest of your life, let alone branch out and be an entrepreneur. And then God forbid you change your entrepreneurial journey every couple months.
Yeah.
How was that for you? Because I'm sure there was a lot of personal growth and also just like releasing the ego and trying to stay true to yourself in that journey.
You know, that's been one of the biggest challenges for me, is allowing myself to be more, to express myself more, and to be bold and confident that I do have these skills and I do have experience doing all of these things. Even if you maybe haven't seen it from me, I've been doing it in the background. And that's kind of like my biggest piece of conditioning is self-worth. And I've kind of gotten to the point where I've accepted, like, I might always be insecure. Every time I reach a new level, I'm going to feel like I'm not good enough. I need to know more. I need another certification, like whatever it is. And that's a pattern that's pretty common. I'm definitely not unique in that. But that's always been the challenge with me in the next level. And what I've just started doing is, as soon as I have like 80% confidence, like my 80% confidence is like a white male in corporate's 120% like that, you know what I'm saying? Like, I need to start diving in and expressing myself and allowing myself to share what I know before I feel ready, because by the time I'm ready, I've missed out on teaching people for months and months. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's really my thing, is I don't want to ever hoard information, and I don't ever want to hold back, because then I'm not in alignment with my mission, which is to serve people. So the more that I can open myself up and allow myself to share what I know, and be comfortable with being wrong every once in a while, or be comfortable with saying, I don't actually know the answer to that question. That's been kind of the biggest struggle for me, but it's gotten so much easier. You know, I was probably less than a year ago. One of my coaches was like, I was like, what is my title even? Like, what do I even call myself? And she's like, what about human design expert? Duh. And I was like, well, I'm not an expert. She's like, you've been doing this for like a year and a half. You're certified. You've been teaching other people, even if you haven't been talking about it on your marketing. That's what you're teaching your clients. So how are you not an expert? Like, because I haven't been doing it for 20 years and I don't have a PhD. And, you know, like, there's just so many rules I have around what it means to be an expert or what it means to know something. And I don't think I'm the only person by any means. So that's just kind of, I'm like just pushing through that and just kind of letting that go and getting over myself, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. As a coach, I'm curious only because I'm a coach as well, kind of holistic wellness. But again, I do so much more than what I actually share that I'm doing. So I relate to your journey a lot.
Yeah.
The
titles are so small. Like, they don't actually
so
mean anything. You know, we can just make up whatever and let our expertise speak for itself, I guess. But yeah,
completely. And then there's so much
wellness
pressure.
is like such a huge thing. You know, there's so many different things that you could do within that, you know.
Totally. Yes. And then we're even, constricted to that Instagram bio and like, all the things.
The bane of our existence. Like, oh my gosh, how can I fit everything that I know, everything that I can help you with in like 140 characters? It's insane.
Right. On an app that somebody could pull the trigger on and delete today.
Yeah.
We
try not to think about that. It'll be fine.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Those are foolproof.
Right. For sure. So funny. With everything that you've done, I myself am someone where I believe a lot in like our personal experience and journeys and everything like that. But I also I'm a 4-1 in human design. So you'll appreciate that too. I'm a huge researcher. I love, yes, love learning, love, just even like getting certified and feeling knowledgeable, feeling like, okay, maybe I am an expert, and like, what is the definition of an expert anyway? Are you someone where you prefer to kind of get a certification before going out and teaching something, or is it something kind of blending it with personal experience? Like, where do you stand on that? coaching? Because I know everyone is a little bit different in that realm.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's one that whenever I run into clients who are a line one, that's always a big thing for them. We have to make sure that you're getting certified because you want to have this information and it's going to deepen your understanding and make you feel more connected with what you teach or whatever. Like it has to be an aligned decision instead of a validation. I think from the 3D like ego perspective, we want to have the certification, we want to have the diploma, we want to have the accolades to show people, hey, I'm good at this and I know what I'm talking about. And that's not it. Like that's kind of missing the point. So I'm kind of in the middle because I do have certifications in everything that I teach. So I don't want to pretend like I don't believe in certifying yourself, but I think it's more for an education versus to tell people I'm a certified life coach or I went through a certification program for quantum energy coaching. Like
Totally.
it's kind of tricky. And to be honest, I haven't finished my last video in my quantum energy certification. So I guess I'm not actually certified because I never finished the last video. You know what I'm saying? So like we're kind of in the middle, but I think it has to be when you feel confident, when you feel secure that whatever someone throws at you in a session or in a conversation or whatever, that you can help them and you can feel really solid in the knowledge and the foundation that you've built. I think that's where you need to stand,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I also have clients who have master's degrees in psychology and different things like that. And they're like, I definitely did this because I felt like I needed to. Yeah. And I really wish that I hadn't, because I could have saved a lot of time and money.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And yeah. And I've actually had a lot of people ask that. Actually, my grandpa asked me that when we were on vacation last month. He was like, so do you have a psychology degree? Like, have you done any of that? I was like, nope. And he's like, and that doesn't bother people? I was like, no one's ever asked me if I have a psychology degree.
I love that.
Ever. So, and there's no regulation, which is a double-edged sword, like it's great because we don't have to do what the man tells us to do, but there are also some kooks out here
Mm-hmm.
that are teaching stuff that they don't have any business teaching. So I'm kind of in the middle. Like it has to be whatever works for you. And as long as you're coming at it from the energy of service, I think that's always what I go back to,
Mm-hmm. Completely. And it goes back to, energy. You said it earlier, like energy is everything. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe whether it's I'm electing to work with someone or reading a blog post, reading a book, listening to a podcast, whatever it is, like you can pick up on the energy and you can understand, is this something that feels good to me? Is this something I vibe with? Am I clicking with this person? Am I not? And like, if it's not there, trust that it's not there for a reason. Yeah. And like, you don't have to like every person you meet. You don't have to believe everything you read or whatever. And like, if it doesn't jive with you, cool. Like, big deal.
Oh yeah. And I also think we have, in the US at least, we have such a rigid idea of what education is. And we forget that so many of the great leaders of history were self-taught. They didn't go through an MBA program, like it's just not. And if you think back to a lot of the teachers that you had growing up, you're probably a lot smarter and a lot better rounded and like just a lot more tapped in than they were. So why would you, we just can't put so much emphasis on, I need this other person to tell me that I've done a good job. Like that's kind of what our education is. It's just silly, like what we think. And I learned so much more from books and from people's free webinars and from, listening to podcasts and things like that than I could have if I'd gone back to and got a psychology degree, because they would have just taught me how to run a double-blind experiment. And like, I don't care about that. I care about why you're thinking the way that you're thinking and how to fix it, how to flip it around. And I know how to do that. So, and next time someone comes out and says, hey, there's this new thing they just discovered, then I'm going to teach myself and I'm going to learn it and I'm going to teach you. It's just, we have such a rigid idea of what constitutes learning, and it's just silly.
So silly. I feel that so much. I mean, even just for myself personally back in school, like I would be, I mean, there's a lot, that comes with this, but I would be so focused on like, I have to get that A, I have to pass
Yes.
the test. That
Same.
like, I swear I would literally memorize, like short-term memorize the information, basically like blackout, pass the test. And it's like, okay, well, what did I just learn? Like nothing. Like, did I retain anything? And it's just so backwards. Like it shouldn't be so focused on this grade or this, because then it's like, what's the point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny. My degree is actually in global supply chain and operations management.
Oh, fascinating.
Which doesn't sound like anything like I do, but I chose it because at that point I already knew I wanted to start my own business. And reading all the literature, all the brochures, everything that I could think of, because I started in marine science because I got the most scholarships in marine science. And then I realized I was going to max out at like $30K a year and probably going to have to work in a boat. I was like, no. So I was like, okay, what's like the biggest pond I could go into that could help me start my own business at some point? And operations management supply chain was essentially a program based on problem solving. Like they taught us how to run businesses efficiently and a lot about manufacturing. Like I know a lot about manufacturing and how to solve problems. And it was like, okay, well, that's going to serve me a lot better than like a marketing degree or a finance degree. And they also had the highest employment rate after graduation and the highest paid employment rate after graduation, which I was like, give me that money so I can save it up and start my own business. And so that was just the goal the whole time. And I used some of the tools that I learned in that program. And so it was, again, like I'm choosing things based on what's the end goal and what feels the best to me. And that was really the best case scenario. So yeah, it's just funny how things end up working out.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny how they work out. To that point, though, about money. So, whether as a coach, as just an individual in society, like making more money, making enough money, having enough money, like money is the thing, now we've got crypto and all this stuff, we're all talking about money all the time.
All the time. Yep.
All the time. I would love to know from you, like, what does money look like to you? What does money mean to you? How has even like your energy around money shifted through the work that you've done personally and professionally?
Oh gosh, there's so much there. Money is probably one of the bigger sticking points that we have, like in our personal development. I'm sure that you've experienced this as well, but it's one of those things that it's so ubiquitous. It's just everywhere all the time, like you said, that it's the way we think about it is so important. And I kind of think about it there are two categories of money. There's the lower realm version of money, which is the way that most people think about it in our society. Money doesn't grow on trees. It's hard to come by. You have to hustle. You have to earn it. We have to have money to have status, like all of those things. Like I would call that all conditioning. That's one way you can choose to be in relationship with money. Or you can look at money as a tool to help co-create your life, like an energy, almost like a frequency, something that wants to move around and wants to come in and wants to flow out and wants to help you build that which you're here to build, right? Like we all have a purpose. I really believe that we all have a purpose, especially if you're listening to this podcast, you're definitely drawn into all this stuff. So you have a purpose, and money is one of those things that's going to help you create what you need to create to serve that purpose. And when you switch into that, then money becomes like a buddy. Like, I'm so thankful to have you here. I'm so thankful that you come in, and I'm so like, I would just love to look for new ways to feel abundant, because we talk about abundance too. That's not just money. Money is like a little category underneath the umbrella of abundance. Abundance is love. I mean, I'm looking out the window and like all these trees and all the blades of grass, like all of that is abundance. Everything that we experience, the fact that we have this technology to talk to each other across hundreds of miles, and now we can broadcast it to thousands of other people and they can hear it, and like it's incredible, and like that is abundance. And so the more you can tap into that, the more ways you're going to find money can come in, and you got to open yourself up to letting it come in. And that's something that I think women especially have a really hard time with. I don't think men have as much of a hard time. I think they're maybe primed to allow people to do things for them more, or allow there. It's almost like, I don't want to generalize, but it's almost like they're taught more of like, of course I deserve this. Of course I'm qualified for this. Of course I earned this. I think for some reason women have a lot harder time with that.
It's almost like I have to first prove myself and then I can get that.
And then I can get it. But the problem with that is we often have this really high bar of how much we have to prove.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's the difference. I think men have like a lower bar of what they have to prove in order to earn it. And this isn't all men, all women. It's just a pattern that I've noticed. And you're nodding, so I feel like you have too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just all about giving ourselves grace and seeing like, oh no, it doesn't have to be the way that I think it has to be. So it's those two different categories, and you get to choose which one you want to buy into. And as soon as I was able to like fully integrate myself into that higher realm abundance frequency was when I actually did start seeing things change, and my bank account changed. But a lot of other things changed before the money started coming in for me. So I definitely have not had what you would call like a skyrocket to financial success story at all. I'm still not making the money that I know I can be making, but so much has changed since I was able to anchor into that frequency, like so much. Because I also think we attach a lot of meaning to our business success and our personal success on how much money we're making. So it's really important to look for all the evidence, not just in your bank account.
I love that you mentioned that, because it's so true. And again, we were talking earlier about like releasing that outcome.
Yep.
And with stepping into, a true life of abundance, or, really bringing in abundance and energy and all these things into your life, like a lot of it, again, still can then get focused back to, okay, but where's your bank account?
Yeah. But
where's your business?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that the other really came first before the money, because I just think that that's such an important piece to just really make note on. And like, again, you weren't doing anything wrong. Like you were gaining so much. And then, okay, cherry on top, now the bank account is full, or, fuller than how it was, 6 months ago, a year ago, whatever it is.
Absolutely. And it's funny too. I think I always heard stories about people who ended up with a ton of money and success and weren't happy. And I could never understand. I was like, yeah, right. If you handed me $1 million right now, I would be on cloud 9. Like there would be no problems. I would be done. Like that would be it. I would be so happy and I would be elated. And I didn't really get those stories until very recently. I sold like the highest I've ever sold in my business. And it was like a huge, huge leap up. And the next day I woke up and I felt hungover. I felt sick. I felt anxious. I felt awful. And it was actually the way I used to always feel. And I just didn't realize that wasn't normal. It's like, whoa, I used to feel like this all the time. And I realized it's because when people are handed that much money, or a lot more money than they're used to, and they don't change their mindset, it's very jarring. And their money really just amplifies who you already are. And so if you have a lot of money, then it's just going to amplify what you were already feeling. And so this was really an opportunity for me to see, I still have some ideas around what money means, and I still have some trouble receiving, obviously, because I'm feeling very anxious. And I do still have some scarcity that's popping up, because now I'm like, okay, well, what if I can't ever do this again? What if this was a fluke? You know, all of these things. Well, like, what if I only get these 2 clients and I told everyone I was going to get 5, you know, like all of that stuff was coming up. So it's just this really good example of like, okay, let's go back to the baseline, which is this. I am so thankful for this. This is awesome. And I need to let myself sit in this, because this is a huge milestone for me. And it was so easy and it was so exciting. And I'm so excited to serve her, all that stuff. And let's go look at all this conditioning that's popping up as well. Like, you're never done. If you want to really, really be happy and content, I don't know that we'll ever be done with that kind of work. But it was just such an eye-opening thing. I was like, oh, okay, I get how you could probably feel really bad even if you have a ton of money, you know?
It's
So that was a really
true.
good experience. Like, okay, now I can really embody this now that I've experienced this, you know?
It's such a good experience. Yeah. I relate that so much to, again, on like, you know, a different kind of bracket in all of this is location. Like, I witnessed of myself that I used to be very dependent upon a location would like dictate my happiness of like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, if I'm living here and I have this to go to and I can do this and do this, like, then I'll be happy in all these things. And we're living in a small little lake town just outside of the Tampa area. And like, old me would have been like, hell no, you're going to be so miserable, blah, 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 all the things. And I'm like truly the happiest I've ever been. And I really equate that to just all the work and all that conditioning. And again, like noticing those patterns of like, okay, cool, I got what I thought I wanted, but like, why do I still feel this way? Why is all of this popping up? And like those experiences too, like when they pop up and like that ickiness, and as hard as it is to feel those things, they're also like such a gift too. Cause I'm like, okay, thank you. Moment of growth, like resistance. You suck and I don't like the way you make me feel, but I know that you're here for me and you're here to teach me, and you're only here because there's, you know, somewhere that I need to turn, something that I need to look at, walk through differently, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I think you mentioned something really key. When I live here, then I'll feel. When I have this, then I'll feel. And I noticed it a lot when I was doing, you know, the intuitive eating coaching back in the day. When I lose this weight, I will feel happy, or I will be, when I can fit into these jeans, then, and it's that if this happens, then I'll feel. And you're attaching your happiness to an external source, which is usually based on ego, validation, whatever. And you just nailed it. Like, that doesn't have to be the reality. You can feel confident right this second. You can feel like an expert before you even teach anybody. You can feel like a successful business owner before you even sign a client. Like, there are just so many rules we attach, and that's what we're doing. Like, we just have to break all of those rules. So I think you nailed it on that. That was perfect. Well said.
Totally. Oh, such a fun conversation. One thing I did want to hit on as well, you mentioned your self-worth was a big one. And also too, that the journey never ends, which is so true. There's not some like magical finish line that we run through. If anything, it's like, okay, cool, you got there. Here you go. Look what's now ahead for you.
I have a friend who always says new level, new devil. And at first it's like, no, I don't, like, that's not true. And now every time I have this like up level, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But I do think it gets easier to work through it. Like, you kind of get a process, and you know what to take yourself through, and it doesn't have to last for as long. You know, I was in a dark night of the soul last summer for like 3 months, where I was just like questioning my whole identity and like all of that stuff. And, you know, this most recent bout of anxiety lasted a day. Like, Wednesday I felt anxious, and Thursday I woke up and I was like, all right, let's hit the ground running. Let's get another one. Like, let's go. Yeah. And so I do think it gets easier, which is good. 100%. There were a couple times in the past year where I was like, oh my God, I cannot do this for the rest of my life. I'm so tired.
Yes. Such a good point. Such a good point. Yeah, it's so true. And that's what kind of makes it exciting too, is when you have that and you're like, whoa, I just moved through that in a couple days or, maybe an hour or something, and like noticing those energy shifts. And I feel like anxiety is such a good teacher too, because that is
Mhm.
something that is like a night and day difference of when you're feeling joyful and when your anxiety just has that tight grip on you.
Mhm.
But I would love to know if you're, as we're kind of talking about like money and everything like that, because again, it's just like such a hot topic, not the end all be all by any means,
I know,
but
but like it feels like it is. If you
it does.
haven't really worked through it, then it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Do you feel that your self-worth was tied to money? That there was a lot of cords connected there?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I had such an attachment, like my identity and my worth was so attached to um my success, my financial stability. I was an awards whore. That's what I call
Mm.
myself. I needed the accolades, I needed the validation so much. And I couldn't ever just be satisfied with doing my best. I said that I was, but I wasn't. So yeah, and it really, I didn't, and I don't think this is necessarily true for everyone. I think that a lot of people do make really good money and they do experience financial success before they work through all of this stuff. It just happened to be for me that I did not earn any extra money. I did not receive anything excess or overflow until I unhooked that. And I will also say I haven't fully unhooked it. Like, I want to be totally honest. I don't know if I'll ever be done with that. I think it's just one of those things that is just inherent in who I am. And it's in my human design. Like, I can see where the pattern comes from. And so I'm getting to the point now where I'm just accepting that about myself. Like, I might always feel on some level that I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And I'm just going to have to deal with that and just kind of ignore it. Let it be like that little devil on your shoulder and be like, okay, bye. Like, thank you. We're done now. But yeah, it's really, it's hard when your identity is so anchored in those frequencies. And it's taken me 3 years to get to this point. It's taken a very long time. But as soon as I was able to kind of get perspective and clear enough of it out that I could see exactly when and why it's happening, it made it so much easier to let go of it and embody, okay, if I don't get XYZ or if I don't make XYZ, then I'm still worthy of love. I'm still allowed to talk about my business. I'm still allowed to tell people this is what I do for a living. I don't need to hide just because I haven't achieved this level of success. So my boyfriend, actually, the other night, I was telling him about this launch that I'm doing right now. And this is like such a big thing for me. It's like out of my comfort zone. And one of my clients who signed up last week, actually, she was like, I can see that this is a stretch for you. And that's part of why I want to be in it, because I want to experience that with you. And I like almost want to be in the stretch with you because I feel like there's so much that's going to happen here. I was like, that's really cool. And I love that you picked up on that, because you're right. This is a stretch, but it's really exciting. And he was asking me, okay, well, have you ever actually exceeded your corporate salary? And I was like, no, I haven't. And if he had asked me that a year ago, I would have gone into, well, I'm trying to explain why I haven't made this much money. I'm trying to make excuses. I'm trying to show him this is how I'm going to make the money now. Like, almost like defend myself. And when he asked me that last night, I was like, no, I haven't. I haven't. And I'm still here. Like, I'm still in business. Like, we're still good. And I'm so much happier and I don't even care. And if I reach all my goals that I have set for myself this year, then I'm going to just blow it out of the water, and that's really exciting. So it's just such a cool shift to see how I would have reacted. And that's, I think, helps a lot when we're looking back and kind of trying to measure how much we've grown. Oh, this is how I would have reacted to this in the past. And this is how I reacted this time. And I didn't even have to try. It's cool to see that. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah, no, that's so beautiful and such a prime example too of, especially in the whether coaching space or just entrepreneurial space, or even as like a creative and an artist, like I feel like there's so much that is measured between like, oh, but have you exceeded the income you brought in corporately? And like, you're not worthy, or you don't have a valid career or a valid business unless you're achieving these certain financial goals. And like, it doesn't have to be that way.
To be that way at all.
Yeah.
And I talked about this on my podcast a couple weeks ago, but I went on a vacation with my family for the first time since COVID. So my mom's side of the family is very traditionally successful. Like they're very wealthy. They're very, they're running businesses. We've got a surgeon. We've got corporate sales. Like everybody's just doing really, really well. I did really well up until, and I'm the oldest cousin. So I like have to be I have to be ahead of everybody. I have to like, this is just how it's always been. I'm like leading the way, whatever. And I did really, really well up until about the last day. I started to notice myself getting really triggered because my cousin got this new fabulous job, and everyone's like giving her toasts at dinner. And she like told me how much her salary was and how much her commission bonuses were. And I was just like, and she's like got her Louis Vuitton. And I was like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? I'm 26 years old and I made, 30K last year. Like, what am I doing? This is insane. Like, I could have just gone to Chicago and like done the sales thing, like all this stuff. And I got really triggered for a couple of days. And I ended up talking to my coach and she was like, this is really good because now you can see where you still have gaps, where you still have not fully anchored into this new reality. And so again, it took me basically 2 days where I was like, okay, we're going to hunker down and we're going to deal with this and we're going to unpack all of this stuff. And as soon as I did that, I came out and it was night and day, totally different. And this is so funny, but right after that was when you contacted me to do this podcast. And I was like, this is great. I totally asked for this. And I had a couple people interested in my program. I have people who want to promote it for me. I had like just all of this stuff started coming in as soon as I dedicated a couple of days to letting all of that go. Like it can happen so fast now.
So incredible.
So fast, and it's so cool. And so it's like you said, when you meet resistance, it's something that is here to teach you. It's a light, it's a mirror showing you, okay, this is where you still need to lean in. This is still where you need to grow. Yes, that was a really not super fun experience, but like on the other side, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. This is
You're like, thank you for that experience. What are some of your tools and practices, or even just like, a go-to practice when you do hit those triggers? Obviously that was, kind of a big one, like a couple days worth.
For sure. And it took me a couple of days to even want to get into getting rid of it. Like I kind of needed to sit in it for a couple of days and throw a pity party and like vent and all of that stuff. And I think that's important too, because if we try and force ourselves to start meditating and whatever it is, it's like hitting your head against a wall. Like if you need to be pissed off, you need to be pissed off and you need to let that be valid. And that's part of emotional regulation is a really, really big thing that I do when I'm working on clearing this stuff, because until our emotional system or nervous system are on board and calm, if your nervous system is in fight or flight, you're not going to get anywhere. So you have to take the time to get your nervous system calmed down. And that's when you can start doing things like meditating, I have a meditation called it's not technically a meditation, it's an activation called Calm Ascension. And I do that every morning. And it's basically like just lining up your energy so that you're tapped in with your soul frequency, you're grounded into the earth. And I do that every day. And then I'll just do like, if I need to do breath work, if I need to stretch, I exercise. That helps with my nervous system a ton. And at this point, I do a lot of quantum energy clearing. So I'll go in and use tools and just like pull the energy out of my body. Like I can see it. It's sitting in my chest, or it's sitting in my solar plexus, or I had one client who said she had like this patch of energy that was like stuck on her right shoulder, which is associated with daddy issues, like male authority figure issues. She like pulled that out. And I told her that's where that came from. And she's like, oh my God, that's so true. Like this is, and we got into this whole session about clearing out her stuff with her dad. So like I do a lot of stuff like that, but it always comes down to that nervous system regulation. And it always comes down to anchoring into the frequency of what you actually want to experience instead of what your current reality is showing you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So fun. This conversation has been such a joy. I feel like there's so much more I want to hit on with you. We will wrap up this first round. So before we kind of close out here, I love to end all my episodes with some loving your own soul questions, as I call them, which are just some fun on the spot questions. But before we touch on those, where can people find you to connect with you, work with you, listen to your podcast?
I hang out mostly on Instagram. I'm at _Meredith Rawlings on Instagram, and that's where most of my stuff is. And the Column of Ascension activation I mentioned is in my bio for free if you guys want to go check that out. I am currently enrolling for this new group program. It's called Quantum Alignment Certification, and all the details are on my website and all over my Instagram as well. And my podcast is called Designed and Aligned. So that's on Spotify and Anchor. Again, like that's all in my Instagram bio. And yeah, I would love to have you on my podcast too. I have like 18 people that listen to it, but
I love it. I love podcasting. Like, I truly think we just live in the coolest time of like sharing information and stories, and oh, it's just so amazing. I'm like, okay, I get why I reincarnated during this time.
right. And I started it. It was one of the first things that I really started in my business that had nothing to do with trying to make it successful. Like I just wanted a place where I could come and just, when I'm in the feeling or like when I have an idea, just sit down, and it doesn't matter what I look like. I can just talk about it and I can just stream of consciousness. And that's really how I've been doing it so far. And it's been so rewarding because even if I get one or two people that are like, oh my gosh, that helped me so much. Awesome, because it was so easy. Like there's no barrier to entry. It's just so easy. And so now once I get my act together a little bit more, I would love to have more people come on and share their stories, because I'm not the only person who should be able to talk. Kind of balance, right?
Yeah. And it's such a good point, you know, whether it's like one person, two people, or even yourself. Like I found there's so much power in re-listening to yourself months later or weeks later. Like I keep trying to figure out what to do with this, because I feel like there's something there for healing and personal growth and just self-empowerment, like self-worth. It's just, you just shock yourself and you're like, who is that? Like, that's me. I said that.
Yeah.
Like,
do you ever listen and just like find yourself smiling? Like I'll just watch, I think I watched like maybe an old IGTV or something from a couple months ago, and I was just like grinning at myself on the camera. I was like, this is maybe the most narcissistic thing I've ever done. It's so, I don't know what it is, but it's so good. And actually my coach has a practice where you like write out, and I'm sure this is not just her, but you write out kind of like a manifestation script and you record it yourself and you listen to yourself, because I think you're right. There is something there about like your own voice activates you in some way. But yeah, I think there's something there for sure.
Cool. Oh, I love that idea. I do that if there's like a book that is like, oh, here's a meditation, and they kind of just like write out the meditation. I actually record myself reading the books. I can do it because I'm like,
that's really smart.
How am I supposed to like read it, close my eyes, open my eye? Like it doesn't work. So
that's such a good idea, because I've always had an issue with that in books.
Yeah.
Like Abby Bernstein's books, and there's this one called Existential Kink that I base a lot of my coaching on, and hers as well. Like I actually did do that because I had a client who needed it, but of course I would do it for a client, but I wouldn't do it for myself. That's interesting.
Of course.
That's funny.
Yeah. Totally wraps up. Yeah.
Gosh,
so
right?
True. Yeah. The journey. Well, let's jump into some of these loving your own soul questions. So we've been talking about human design, and I don't even think I asked you, but what is your type?
So I am a 4/6 emotional projector.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. Yep. What about astrologically? Do you know your sun, moon, and rising sign?
Yes. So I am an Aries sun, Taurus moon, and Gemini rising.
When is your birthday?
April 2nd.
I'm April 14th.
Oh my gosh. So you're an Aries too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't really know a lot about astrology until I started learning about human design. And even then, I only know what it means as far as like reading your chart in human design. So you have like gates placed in certain astrological signs and planets and stuff like that. But I have this client who's an astrology expert, and she totally blew my mind with some of this stuff. So she's kind of my go-to now when I have questions about it. But I didn't even know what it meant to, because I noticed, and I don't know if you have experienced this, because you said you're a Sagittarius moon, right?
Yeah.
So I used to really identify with the whole Aries, fiery, like go-getter, that kind of thing. And then I noticed in the past maybe 2 years, I stopped when I saw memes or descriptions or a horoscope or anything like that. I just didn't click with it anymore. I was like, that doesn't feel like me. And then someone explained to me that my moon is probably where, like, as I get more aligned with my actual who I am on the inside, my moon is really where I live.
Yes.
And that feels really accurate because Taurus is like sensitive and emotional and like, it's like, yeah, that's more like me.
Totally. I feel that 100%. I'd actually be curious how many Aries in particular feel that way. Cause I've talked to a couple other people who are Aries that have kind of like drifted away from like, yeah, that's not really me anymore. Or, I don't completely identify with that. But yeah, I feel
Yeah.
that
So
for sure.
my boyfriend is actually a triple Aries. He's
Oh,
like
wow.
across. He's just a one-hit wonder. Like that's all you get. That's all she wrote. It's just Aries all the way. That's been kind of interesting since I figured that out a couple months ago, to kind of watch how that plays out and how we're different. But I do think there is a big difference. Like we have the same drive, we have the same ambition, we have the same sense of humor, which is super fun. But where I get into kind of the more emotional, sensitive, intimate kind of area, he kind of stays up here in the, it's almost more of a masculine energy, I guess. And I'm still observing. Still trying to see how that plays out. Cause I think you're right. A lot of people in this space who are Aries tend to drift more towards the moon. But if your moon is the same as your sun, then
you're there.
what is it? Yeah. So that's interesting. I would actually love to research more about that. Anyway.
Yeah, so interesting. We were talking about nature earlier, kind of when we started our connection to nature. If you were a flower, what type of flower do you think you would be?
So my favorite flower has always been a peony.
Love those.
And I never really thought about why, but there's, first of all, just very beautiful. And I think something that I love about them is they have so many different, really delicate petals. Like there are just so many layers to it. And I don't know, there's just something really beautiful about how delicate they are. And I've never, that was one of the things when I discovered my human design, that I realized like I am very sensitive and I am very emotional. I need to be okay with that. And so maybe I would be a peony, because I'm starting to like lean into that a lot more.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
What was something you loved to do as a child?
When I was really little, I would not wear pants. I only wore dresses, and they had to be twirly dresses. So I would spin around and dance and have my dress twirl. So when I do my inner child work, or when I feel like I'm getting too serious, I go put on a twirly dress and I go and dance. So that was one of my favorite things. But yeah, I was just always outside, basically. I played dress up outside a lot.
So
I was naked a lot, I'm pretty sure. So
yeah. Being a kid is so much fun.
right?
If you had no fear, what is something that you would do?
I think it would either be, it would have to be something in nature that I'm scared of now. Like I think I would love to do like a through hike of the Appalachian Trail or like the Pacific Crest Trail. But I am so scared to do that.
Yeah.
It's so scary to me, but it would be so awesome because it would be so hard. But it'd be
So
so
hard.
beautiful. Like I don't know if you read any of those books, like Wild or anything like that, but they're so fascinating how people change over that journey and the things that you would see, but terrifying. So many people go missing on those trails all the time. So
I know, exactly. Like
yeah.
so incredible. But then, yeah, the other side is like,
What would you do if you had no fear? That's such a good question. You've never thought about it yourself.
I mean, well, one thing that I'm working on right now that I'm very fearful of, which is like a huge thing that I have to work through, is speaking my mind out of love, like out of respect for myself, to my parents.
Ooh,
And
that's
confidently being able to do that. So right
That's
here, right now, yeah, if I had no fear, that is something that I would do.
That's a really good one. I am sending you so much love for that because
It's tough.
it's tough. That's one of the hardest things about becoming an adult is
Mm.
starting to see your parents as humans
Mm-hmm.
and bringing yourself from this, like they're on top because they are the ones that keep us safe and feed us and provide for us, to like, nope, we're on the same level now.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
So tough. Yeah. And I get how tough it is for them too, on that same side
sure.
of like not being able to understand me, wanting to still protect me, wanting what they think is best for me. Meanwhile, not understanding, like, I know what's best for me. And if I don't, I'm going to have to trip and fall and get back up again.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Final question that everyone gets. When did your exploration to diving deeper into your own soul first begin? And how has it evolved since then?
I would say really the first time that I dove into connecting with myself and acknowledging myself on a deeper level was probably when I was in my junior and senior years of college. I was trying to recover from an eating disorder and like multiple eating disorders, and I wouldn't ask for help. I didn't feel like I had any resources. I talked to one therapist and she didn't really get it. And it was the first time that I really took a look at myself and was like, wow, you're really not taking care of yourself. You don't value yourself at all. These are all just all the ways that you're hurting yourself. So that was kind of the first way that I dove in, and it's just become so much more. There's just so much more to me than I knew before. And there's so much more strength than I was aware of. Yeah. So it started there, and that was almost 5 years ago.
Yeah. So beautiful. Yeah. I love that. Well, Meredith, thank you so much. This was so much fun. I just, love this conversation. Love you, your energy. I definitely look forward to continuing this connection and conversation.
Absolutely, Britt. This is awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, what an incredible episode. I feel like I say that after every episode, but that is, it's just such a true statement. I get so lit up by the guests that come on here. Is Meredith not the absolute best? I tell you, the connections that have been happening lately have truly been so soulful. I am forever grateful, and I'm so grateful for you for also tuning in here to this special conversation as well. As always, last but not least, if you feel inspired and enjoyed today's conversation, I would be honored to have you rate and review the show. Your ratings and reviews mean so much to me and our wonderful guests, and in return, really help me to grow the show and just continue bringing on more incredible individuals like Meredith herself. Plus, do be sure to drop in on Instagram and let me know what you are enjoying about the show, if you have any topic recommendations, or even if you just want to say hi. You can find me at the Britt Olson, and I personally just love connecting with all of you, so definitely drop in and say hello. We have such a special community here generating around this podcast. And to that point as well, I would also love to invite you to join our private Modern Wellness Community Facebook group as well. And Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful. But yeah, thank you for tuning in, continuing to be a part of this community. Thank you, Meredith, for holding space with us. And I so look forward to continuing the journey with you again soon.